All right, peace and blessings, everyone. Assalamu alaikum, Ramadan Mubarak. Welcome back to the STEM Files. We took a little short break, kinda, and now we are back with all new original content. We are actually finally back with part two of producing the raw materials needed for survival. This time, we're going to be talking more about our guest, Ahmad Majid's journey into fiber production from livestock. So stay tuned, family, for more after this.
You believe in these false prophets, I say I bet he lying. No football, New York City Giants. Girl dad, rest in peace to Kobe Bryant. When we teaching our babies, we teach them heavy science. Heavy science. Heavy science. When we teaching our women, we teach them heavy science. Heavy science. Heavy science. When we teach men, we teach them heavy.
All right, family. Once again, peace and blessings. This is the STEM Files, where we focus and we highlight the best and brightest in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics in the Black and Brown community. I am one half of the co-host for this, one half of the host of the STEM Files, Tariq Muhammad, aka Tariq Cardiac. I'm a biomedical research scientist with a background and concentration in cardiovascular pathobiology, which is the study of how diseases form in the heart and blood vessels. I'm always joined by my right hand best friend, business partner, Jabril.
Yes, sir. Peace, love, and blessings. Assalamu alaikum. Ramadan Mubarak to the Muslim Ummah. It is your brother and servant, Jabril Muhammad, aka Jabrillion Engineer, civilian mechanical engineer with a focus on naval ship fluid systems and a background in material science and engineering, the study of the various material classes and how they can be used for different applications, whether it be making something stronger, lighter, faster, more efficient, effective. I'm excited. Came off a great day of fasting, reading, study, and a productive day. May Allah bless us with a beautiful, beautiful evening. Let's get into it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And before we continue, I know a lot of us, I know the audience heard us say Ramadan Mubarak, and I wanted to just kind of shed some light on the significance of this month. So, Jabril, can you go give us like a short, brief um, spill on what Ramadan is and why it is important, especially for the Muslims?
Yes, sir. So, Ramadan family, this is the holy month of the Muslims. It is the time in which the Holy Quran was revealed to Prophet Muhammad. May the peace and blessings of Allah be upon him. The Holy Quran being the holy book of the Muslims. Ramadan, many people believe means fasting, but does not. It means intense heat. It is a burning of sin, a burning of those lower desires and those things that take you away from Almighty God Allah in this time. So during 30 days, we fast from sun up to sundown. That's from Fajr prayer to Maghrib prayer. And in addition to simply not eating, we're trying to increase in prayer, increase in good deeds, and align ourselves up with the criterion that Almighty God Allah has presented to us. So when we say Ramadan Mubarak, that just simply means blessed Ramadan. The appropriate return greeting would be Ramadan Mubarak. You can also say Ramadan Kareem. So may Allah bless us in this time. And you do not have to be Muslim to participate. So tap in with us if you want to learn more. Take it day by day. And inshallah, we'll do that. And we also complete the reading of the Holy Quran in 30 days as well. Yes, sir.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm looking forward to tonight's reading as well. And family, like I said before, this is part two of our discussion on producing the raw materials needed for survival. Tonight's guest was on the program on the March 9th edition, and we talked really about agribusiness and the overall business side of farming. So tonight we're going to talk more about the business side of farming, and we're going to talk more about his goals, him and his wife's goals to produce fiber from livestock production. So without any further ado, we're going to bring our guest, two-time guest, back on the platform. Brother Ahmad, assalamu alaikum and Ramadan Mubarak.
Wa alaikum salam, beloved. Ramadan Kareem. Thank you for inviting me back, having me back. I'm glad to be here.
Absolutely, absolutely. So as I mentioned before, right, we're talking about your goals with fiber production, right? So before we get into that, can we talk about, first and foremost, why you wanted to get into fiber production? And what is fiber scientifically? What does that consist of? How do we know fiber from any other type of materials?
That is a wonderful question. I'll do my best to answer it. At least that second. Well, the whole question is wonderful. The second piece, very intriguing.
Yes, sir.
Excuse me.
We can start with the
So
second part if you want.
cool. Yes.
Yes, sir.
So fiber technically is a natural substance that grows um, kind of on its own. You don't have to do anything for it to grow this way. And it grows in a way where it lends itself to linking. And this again is my definition, my understanding,
Yes,
because
sir.
I learned that fiber includes everything from cotton to animal fibers to even hemp fibers or bamboo fibers.
Right.
And for me, and that was the piece that was interesting, I learned what that scientific classification is. And it helped me to understand how different things are created from different fibers, and even how and why different fibers are more suitable for this product and that product. So that was
Yes,
the
sir.
interesting piece that occurred to me when you asked the question. I don't know if I even thought about it that way before, but love that. Um,
Gotcha,
and
gotcha.
the first
And what?
part,
Mhm.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, kind of just to follow into the next part. So, what made you get involved in fiber production? What was that initial decision process like?
Yes, sir. In the very beginning, it occurred to me by Allah's grace that I could work with sheep to produce a quality of felt that would be used for felt tip pens. And that's something that, again, I give credit to Allah because it was quite a niche concept and it never occurred to me before. And I really, really attribute it to the inspiration of studying because as I was studying the animals and the different aspects of how I would create a business, um, just those different areas came together in that um, concept. So that was my first idea, and I had started to scale a business plan and a farm business plan around that. And I learned about alpacas and how they have a different sort of fiber that has different characteristics that lended itself to textile, which is used for clothing or bags or different things. And that became interesting. So I branched off and looked into that as a business model. Um, and it appealed to me more for several reasons. And so we decided to feature that as our main fiber type, the alpacas, but also most likely include sheep for some other pieces that we're thinking about adding in maybe after we're off and rolling. So
Gotcha, gotcha. Jabril, you got anything?
Yes, sir. So as I'm listening, I'm re-going over or going over again rather the title for tonight, Livestock for Fiber Production. And one of the things that comes to mind is you can raise livestock, you can engage animal husbandry from a number of different points. A lot of people from a butchering perspective, from a land clearing, grazing perspective, from a now we're talking about fiber perspective. So from maybe conversations you've had, experience you've had, what are some considerations or different considerations when you're raising livestock for the purpose of fiber production, maybe as opposed to for the purpose of meat consumption or some of these other things? What are some unique considerations that you as someone raising these livestock would want to keep at the forefront of your mind or develop if you're going to engage in this endeavor?
Yeah, and I'm
nice.
gonna add to that real quick because I appreciate Jabril's question because you know I'm always big on using agricultural products to do other things outside of eating and drinking and different things like that. I want to see if I can put uh, I want to see if I can put sheepskin on the ceiling and make some type of some innovative ventilation system or what have you, or insulation for the house or what have you. You know, I want to do some things like that. So yeah, let's expound upon what your other ideas were with these materials.
Beautiful. And I really appreciate your input because it sets me up for something. So, in general, I would say be very clear on your goals and objectives because, like both of you kind of alluded to, depending on what your end product is, or we can pluralize that, what your products will be, it very much bears on probably one of the main determinants of your process identification and then also process scaling. So, in simpler terms, let's say you've created a business model where you have the clientele to simply work on dryer balls, which is a real thing that you can do. And that's unique because it requires a lower quality of animal fiber, number one. So that is important in considerations in terms of process scaling and cost. And when you're looking at that piece, if you know that even if you don't have an award winning sheep, award in this case would be for their fiber quality, you know you don't need that. So, number one, that's going to save on your herd purchase. You're not going to have to spend an extra thousand. There's animals that are valued upwards of $1 million too. So just to know, for people who don't know, like that's the thing. But similar to every other free market industry, there's that um, fluctuation in value. So um, trying to make a specific example, but touch on some of the points in your questions about considerations and why they're important. It would be a different set of considerations. Like for my wife and I, we're going into different pieces of clothing, even that level of detail. Like we're just going to do some socks, we're going to do some hats, we're going to do some limited edition um, t shirts. At least these are the things that we're considering and making those enterprise stacking considerations too. Because, and this is something that you'll probably see across the industries, you'll see the value of stacking your enterprises, which just means when you are doing several things in one field and then being able to piece them out so you know how much of our income comes from socks in this reporting period, whatever that might be, or how much of our operating expenses are we utilizing for this. So that's another piece that I've learned to think with from the beginning, like from start to finish, what is this process going to look like at scale? And understanding that literally depending on what you're trying to produce, um, what your current available resources are, what's your network resources look like, who can you utilize. So it depends a lot, but it typically will depend on understanding what your goals are. And whatever I've learned, even though I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, I had some ideas, like I mentioned, and that has helped a lot in fine tuning what the idea looks like translated into, like I said, a stacked enterprise and like how is this going to operate on the day to day. So
Gotcha.
I hope I touched on all the aspects. If I didn't, please remind me on anything
No,
I left.
you mentioned a lot. You know, one of the things I was trying to hone in on, it kind of as you were talking, it lent. I kind of had something else come to mind. You talked about you're making some limited edition T-shirts, hats, potentially socks, and you know one thing we understand, at least on some level, whether it's just a change in feel, thickness, or what have you, those aren't made the same. They don't feel the same. You don't. There's not the same experience on your body. What are some of the core um, aspects when you talk about raising livestock for fiber production that you want to consider if you want to have a certain end product. So when I think about things like, okay, if I want to make, if I have one animal, maybe I have the potential to have multiple different types of products from it. Am I taking fur or fiber from a particular part of the body? Am I feeding it something, feeding it less of something else? Am I exposing it to more sunlight? I would imagine if you talk about like lower quality fibers, it's like, okay, is there a way to raise, said sheep or what have you, so that it naturally or grows to have fur or wool of a certain quality as opposed to a finer quality or what have you. So like when you talk about those types of nuances, how do we become able to kind of be masters of that journey or process, if you would, and really get the end result we want from a fiber field perspective or
That's cool.
constitution, if you will.
And that question is cool because it's like genetic engineering without taking anything into the lab. You're controlling the phenotype of a sheep without having to take any cells, anything into the lab and graft anything. So that's an interesting question.
Yes, man, I thank Allah for you, brothers. Just even brother Tariq, you utilizing the language phenotype. That's exactly what I was going to speak to. And for those who aren't familiar, it just describes a physical characteristic that can be manipulated. And manipulated in this case is not like diabolical, just meaning that it can be molded. It's probably better.
Right.
And to brother Jabril's points too, you do have, and this is something that I started with, and really the extent of where I've gone with my study in terms of animal husbandry. So I'm glad you pinpointed that. So I'm working with a herder in Point Reyes. It's kind of coastal California, and she's a former doctor, a human doctor, and a hobby ranch owner. So she's approaching it with the time, attention, and ability to do what you're talking about. She's a phenotype breeder, and she has several very renowned, award-winning animals. She has alpaca, and she has other types because again, she's doing several things. It's a hobby thing, but also she's a breeder. So she has a range of animals and a range of phenotypes that she can work with and breed for and document. And so, yes, there are things that you can do. Um, Typically, it goes to the same things that we kind of mentioned in our first conversation about human health, because a lot of people, unfortunately, feed their animals on corn or sometimes poor, I think it's grain. And
Mm-hmm.
even if they were not necessarily poor quality in one sense, if they're genetically modified, they're problematic. And so
Yep.
we're seeing similar um, reports now of animals being fed, a healthy, nutritionally balanced mineral mix. Sometimes Sandy, my mentor, she creates them herself. There are ones that are pre-made that you can purchase. Of course, there's always. But when you understand, and this is what I love about working with her, and she's helping me to understand the guiding principles of what someone would need to know to assess a particular animal. And we're talking about alpacas. So
Right.
if you know alpacas need XYZ nutrient for PQR phenotype production, you're going to include those. And it's not even something hard necessarily to identify at this point because there's, at least since the 80s in North America, alpacas have been a thing. So there's a lot of research. And you just kind of work with the available data um, and the herd that you have. And you would supplement this one's nutrition to hopefully produce this color pattern or this if it's something else, if you're doing your show alpacas, I know we're talking about fiber, but just to juxtapose why those considerations change. If you're showing an alpaca, their legs need to be a certain length apart, certain amount long, and so you would be doing something similar in your nutrition plan to produce that phenotype. So there are things you can do to encourage something or discourage something. And again, it's not like diabolical stuff. It's usually nutrition based and environmental conditions types of things, even like which type of animals you expose to each other. And so, at least that's the extent of what I've learned and have been looking at with my mentor.
Got it, got it. And just to kind of comment on that, it's just like nutrition with the human being, right? If there's a certain result or certain look that you're trying to get this person to give off, poor nutrition will yield obesity, and proper nutrition would yield being physically or somewhat physically fit, mentally and physically, right? So it's really the same thing. You're conditioning these alpaca to look a certain way, just like it would be for any other human being in their nutrition. Did we lose our brother? Oh, there you
No, he's
go.
still with us.
Okay, cool, cool. But yes,
Um,
sir. Go ahead, bro.
no, as you were talking, bro, you brought something to mind because I'm sitting here like it's this is all STEM, it's all science, it's
Yeah.
all experimentation, but as a means to a very specific end that is righteous. We're not talking about animal cruelty. We're talking about these creatures that Allah has blessed us with and that has given us charge over to use in the proper way, right?
Mhm.
And as I'm listening to the ways in which you may feed certain nutrients to render a specific look, sheen, tensile strength, toughness of the fiber, because you're creating a specific end product. It reminds me of some of the things I learned in like material selection. Like I have a specific application that I want to do. I'm building a specific building. I have a component that's going to be under high cyclic stress and loading in a high heat environment. So I have to have something that is both tough but also has a high melting point, because I can't have it failing um, under cyclic loading or getting overheated. Right. So now we're really talking about this from the perspective of animals. But I want to segue into something, you know, everybody, has a plan, right? They say if you don't have a plan for yourself, somebody has a plan for you. And with us having plans, the most well thought out plans don't always work. So in your conversations and your studies and talking to other, people engaged in livestock for fiber production, what are some challenges that they encounter, whether it be from a business perspective, they might be from an animal perspective, and of those specific challenges, how and what ways have they overcome them, and kind of instituted some best practices from those lessons?
Hmm. Yeah, you know what? Actually, so the first thing that came to mind is um, market access. And to zero in a little bit more, what I've seen specifically again for livestock is um, difficulty getting to market in a couple ways. Where I am in California, I'm in central, kind of northern central, and there is a group called Fibershed that I'm a part of now that's working to solve for this. But I think it's several hundred miles or so, and it may even be maybe 50 to 75. But even if it's the low one, because there's like two, I think, maybe three. And I'm talking about processing mills, which are where the raw fiber goes through its processes to end up in one of several um, products, because there's several toward becoming actual textile. So anyway, what I've seen is there's not a lot of processing capability in certain regions. And so that's
Mm,
resulting in very high transportation costs associated with getting it processed. And again, when we're talking about scaling a business and long term and goal setting, it's beyond prohibitive. It's like it stops some people from being able to operate as a business. And so, and that's something that even within the fiber shared network that I encourage people to look into. Um, we are local regional, but we're also national. So you can check your local area, fiber shed, one word, and see if there's a collective, because we're trying to solve for that and to create those local regional networks for fiber production up through, the several, like I said, outputs um, that they're processed to. And the solution, same thing actually, local, regional, or whatever groups that you can find affinity with, whether it's geographic related or not, collaborating and sharing resources and information and manpower, excuse me, is what I have seen and I'm seeing more of. Even I'm seeing response in terms of funding dollars. For example, there's it's for meat processing, but it's a new grant that just came out from FDA. I think it's upwards of 70 million to do local meat processing infrastructure development, similar but different part of the ag market. I'm really looking forward to an opportunity like that. Um, and I'll say this with that, I don't believe anyone should depend at all, very much, but also to think with including as a portion government funding, because it's very iffy, just that's the nature of it. But it does help in a lot of ways, because when you do have that funding, it could help in some of the ongoing stuff that I'm seeing as a need here, or the larger scale pieces, because a mill, if you don't know, it could be small or big, and the cost could be small or big. But in any case, the industrial equipment, even on the small scale, is kind of pricey, so it tends to be more successful with that government support. So, my answer again, in summary, would be kind of two-headed on the same thing. Local, regional, or other sort of collaborative groups would be the solution to the challenge that I've seen, which is how do I get this process in a way that makes sense for my bottom line?
Got it. Got it. Okay. Well, I'm glad you went into the to the government funding side, because where anything involving science or engineering or anything of that nature, government funding is very picky about what type of projects or initiatives that they give money to. So if you can, if you can't shed light on that, that's cool too. But can you give some insight as to you know what other fundraising strategies can people take part in that is of at least the same level or scale as government funding, so that if they are rejected in any way for whatever reason, these individuals can still get the funding they need. Are there any creative initiatives, involving like something like social media, venture capitalism, anything along those lines?
Venture capitalism is a way to go if you can align with people who, yeah, you have true alignment with. Because food production, man, it's one of those ones where you have to be aligned. You can't work with someone who expects or even demands for you to use herbicides and pesticides, but you don't.
Mm,
Just one
right,
example.
right.
And sometimes when you're talking about at least corporate funding, which points back to some other things that we could spend a lot of time on, a lot of times um, those clauses or requirements can be problematic. So, to the extent that you can connect with folks who you do have that alignment with, venture capital is amazing. I'm looking into some of that moving forward, especially for the clients and people that I work with that um, are just, I don't want to say anti government, with good reason, especially when you understand issues of historically documented discrimination and harassment. A lot of
Yep.
particularly BIPOC farmers, Native people, they're just like, no thanks, I don't want any of your programs and services at all. Fine, that's a lane
Straight
for
up.
you.
And you can't be mad at them either.
I mean, if you
Straight up, like,
not if you're fair or any sort of striving to be
mhm.
intelligent, it would be foolish, literally. I don't mean that disrespectfully, like, so I'll leave that there. Um,
Yes,
and
sir.
it's important, and it's something that even you could probably tell in my hesitation to speak about it. thoughtfully, it's something that I come up against a lot. And they're like, why are you even pointing people to this lying government? And I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but these are the things that I hear. And I just recognize that there are two segments who are both within their right to say, I'm going to go ahead and use the opportunity, or I would rather not. But anyway, I say that to say venture or any sort of private funding, as long as they're in alignment, I would say, yeah, look into it, make sure it's in alignment. Also, and again, shout out to Gabe Brown. He calls it corporate welfare and farm welfare. Like a lot of the big production farms, the only way that they're even able to operate is because they have corporate level support and sponsorships, and even government subsidies and other things that in the actual world trickle down to them having a lot of advantages. And Gabe Brown says, if you have a good enough business plan, no matter how big or small, that's your best protection. Make sure you have a good product. Make sure you can demonstrate the value of your product. Again, it goes back to those natural processes, being able to, and he did this. He took the device to a farmer's market and compared whatever he had brought that day. Let's say it was carrots. And it was the device, I forget the name every time, but it shows you the nutrient density of it and what level of this or that is in there.
Mm-hmm. Final chemical screening.
Yeah, he said they almost ran him out the farmer's market because he was saying like I said last time, you're gonna need 10 or 15 of these carrots to equal 1, 2, 3 of these. So like, what do you want to spend your money on?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a real thing. So I say that to say it is wise if you choose to fold in government funded related programs or opportunities into your business plan. But for me personally, I'm like a 20-30%. Like, have a good business model. Be ready to do business if you're in business. And it's an important distinction. This is not hobby farming unless that's what you want to do. But be clear, because the lanes are different, and you're going to find, even if it was hobby, but you didn't have some level of business plan, it will become a headache. So it has to at least break even. So there's no escaping that kind of planning piece for operation and flow. It just kind of changes when you are like, okay, this is a for-profit venture. This is not for hobby. This is not, for community enrichment. You have to identify that and make that consistent.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, family, we've had a lot to discuss so far, and we're only going to build more on top of what we've already went over. But we're at that 30-minute mark, and it's now time to take a quick commercial break, and then we'll get right back into this amazing content and amazing build. So at this time, we're going to go right into our final call promo.
Now you can get the same uncompromising truth you've come to expect from the Final Call newspaper on all your connected devices. Subscribe to the Final Call digital edition today. Go to subscribe.finalcalldigital.com.
Peace. This is Naya Muhammad, a future architect. You're watching The STEM Files.
All right, family, welcome back to the STEM Files. We just took a quick break to go over the Final Call newspaper. So this week's edition, Jabril, what's it all about?
Yes, sir, family. Again, for those who may be unaware, you are listening to, watching 3 proud members of the Fruit of Islam of the Nation of Islam. And this is our flagship product in the Nation of Islam and news source, the Final Call newspaper. To get your digital edition, make sure you go and tap into finalcalldigital.com and also follow at Final Call newspaper on all platforms. This week's edition, total vindication. U.S. government officials admit the reality of so-called UFOs with a new report referring to the existence of a mothership. that releases many small probes, once again proving and confirming that the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad is right and exact. For those who aren't aware, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was teaching on this decades ago, right? The Nation of Islam has had this knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, has been providing it. But a lot of people, those in our community out, called us crazy, called him crazy, said, "Oh, there's no such thing as a mother plane or what have you." That terminology wasn't even around, until the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Nation of Islam started teaching that. So if you want to look at what the Pentagon released and what has been on news sources, get your latest edition of the Final Call newspaper, tap in with your brothers in your respective areas, Philadelphia, Richmond, and California, to get your latest edition of the Final Call newspaper. Again, at Final Call newspaper on all platforms. Stay tapped into this good news you can use and this message dedicated to the resurrection of the Black man and woman in America and around the world. Peace, family.
Absolutely. Thank you, big bro. And this week's Black Business Highlight is once again Sunnybrook Solutions. It is a credit repair service by a brother here in Richmond, Virginia, brother Christopher 3X. He's named after his daughters Sunny and Brooke. In this credit repair service, our brother teaches you how to get your credit to the point where it's not only a good credit score, but it's also a good credit history, and making sure that you understand the difference between the two. Matter of fact, let's go ahead and hear this quick promotional video from my brother.
A lot of people think that just because they have a high credit score, that means that their credit is good. When in all reality, you could have a 720 or 750 credit score, but if you only have one open account, this makes your credit profile weak. So someone with a 620 credit score, with their credit profile built out properly with 10 or more open and positive accounts, this is actually better than someone with a 750 credit score, because this shows that they are trustworthy over 10 or more positive accounts. So when you're looking at a mortgage, or when you're looking at that brand new 2023 Mercedes that you want to get, you have to understand how to structure your credit profile properly. And I have exactly what you need.
Well, as our brother just said, he has exactly what you need. So tap in with Sunnybrook Solutions. The link to this beautiful and very much needed company of our brothers is in the bio. If you're watching, not in the bio, but if you're watching on YouTube, it's in the description. If you're watching on Facebook, it's in the caption. So definitely tap in with that. So also, family, us in the Nation of Islam, or anybody with any type of intelligence, will know that nothing we do in the community, nothing we do for our people means anything if we do not improve self. So we in the Nation of Islam believe that self-improvement is the basis for community development, and that we are not about making change, in the community and doing this, that, and the third, but we're not making any change with ourselves. So definitely tap in with store.finalcall.com to get your editions of study guides 1 through 18, self-improvement study guides volume 1 and 2, $20 a piece. Please tap in with that, family. Also, all right, so we're back at it. If you're watching, we're live on YouTube and Facebook. Our social media pages are at the STEM Files on Instagram and Twitter, Facebook and YouTube, at Tariq Cardiac, at your brilliant engineer. We are live with our brother once again, brother Ahmad Majid. He's an agribusiness specialist. We've had a great conversation, a great build so far. We've been talking about livestock development for fiber production. So let's get into another aspect of tonight's program. You just shared some good news with us, brother Ahmad, before we went live. Can you talk more about that and what that means for your future endeavors when it comes to fiber production?
Yes, sir. I just accepted an invitation to fill a part-time role at a local community garden where it's a lot of vegetable crops related stewarding. And so in terms of bringing me closer to mine and my wife's goal of becoming for-profit farmers, that's one of the last pieces that I needed to demonstrate ability to farm. That's basically a snapshot from the language that's connected to the loan product that my wife and I are using. It's a USDA loan product, a rural development product. And one of the requirements is to demonstrate either past ability or current ability to manage a similar operation. So for people who are coming into the space and thinking about using any USDA or FSA funding products, my information is there. You can tap in. I can help share what I've learned. So yeah, that's one of the things you would have to do unless, for example, you're a second, third generation farmer already. Maybe you helped at your family's farm. But for me, being a new beginning, meaning people coming from somewhere else, that's kind of where I'm curating first steps and like how to get started types of FAQs and program related stuff. So if you're super brand new like I am, that's something to be thinking with in your planning process. But anyway, you got to demonstrate your ability to manage a farm. And so that was the last piece for me that I needed to kind of finalize my business plan presentation, which is also a prerequisite for the loan product that we're using. You do have to have a business plan. It can be really detailed. It can be really simple. I just like to be detailed. So
Yes, sir.
I'm very excited about that, and I'm announcing it here on the STEM Files.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
We
You heard it
appreciate
here
that.
first. Yes,
Yes, sir.
sir.
Yes, sir. Absolutely, absolutely. And you know, in the business plan aspect, you know, it's really crucial to anything that you're doing, right? Because it's literally showing a potential investor, a potential someone who may be interested in just partnering with you or working with you. It's showing them step by step how you plan on doing things, right? So
Exactly.
in a business plan for something farming related, are there any nuances about a typical business plan that may be different from the run of the mill business plan? Like, oh, if I'm opening up a barbershop, or if I'm, you know, starting a restaurant or something like that. Is there any are there any differences considering that most of the activity is done outside in the field, anything like that?
Yes, sir. There are many. Um, in the moment, they're not rushing to my mind, but one of the first things that I saw was um, something called a Schedule F. It's a unique tax reporting document that only exists in agriculture business. So you're right when you say, excuse me, that there are unique business related um, things to understand and requirements or considerations. Even to the piece that I started to talk about, the again, if you're using that loan product anyway, the prerequisites around the opportunities. Now, if you have your own funding and you feel capable of doing it on your own, that's a different route. Um, but that would have to be the case in order to pursue that. But um, yeah, with the loan product that we're using, having those, I think it's a good thing. I want to say this because it helped me to really, really be prepared, absent just having money to invest or land in our family to just go on and work and learn through that, which is fine because a lot of it too, even I think you mentioned here, the best laid plans don't always pan out, but I feel like it's
Yes, sir.
wise to have a trajectory at least. So
I agree. I'm so glad that you brought that up. And I think if I can we take a step back, you said something so profound. You put the distinction out there between hobby farming and for profit farming, but you also said you have to be business minded regardless to make it work for you. Whether or not you're selling products or not, you're going to be incurring expenses the same way you have to be business minded if you're just doing regular shopping at a supermarket. You know, what do I need? Because now it's like, okay, I'm buying items to help uh, sustain and move my farming into the future, be able to sustain this. So it's like, okay, in order for my chickens to keep laying eggs, or the cows keep producing milk for the, I have to put them in a position to be successful. Okay, if I want to have this area cleared or whatever, then okay, I'm gonna have goats here because they're gonna eat the grass, but okay, what do they need? They're getting sick. So like there's certain things, considerations in order to keep your operation going, whether it's just for your family or for the greater community and as well as your family. You have to have the mindset or a system-oriented mindset to be able to be successful. So I think it's important to consider that, business is literally the activity of life. Just because you may not have a quote unquote business, that's what the Honorable Minister Farrakhan teaches us, and we learn from the teachings. Like, you have to have that type of mindset to be successful. It is a science in of itself, and it renders the human being happy amongst other things as well, to be productive and to be engaged in those types of activities. So
Beautiful. Yes, sir. I agree 100%. Well said.
Absolutely. Well, we talked about fiber production. We talked about certain elements of agribusiness, because this whole conversation really is agribusiness. And I wanted to know, from a personal perspective, right? And Jabril made a very good point about being happy with the production and being happy with what you're doing. What is the most pleasing thing about this entire journey for you personally? What is it about that say, okay, I'm happy with this or this particular aspect is making me happy? What's satisfying about this for Ahmad personally?
Praise be to Allah. I feel aligned in this work, and that's rewarding. Like, it kind of just occurred to me too. So I'm stepping into the epiphany as I'm speaking it. There are others, in terms of seeing a person who just finds value in a piece of advice that I give, or literally helping someone to start a new farm, or even just a garden in their backyard. Um, but those, I think, are the evidences of what I really take from it, and it's feeling in alignment. Like I mentioned, when I started this course of transition about 4 years ago this July, it was really striving to be a better servant in the nation, and to be a better doer of, what I professed. Not like I was lying, but just like
Right.
accountability. If this is what I'm believing in, what I've dedicated my life to in other ways, like, what's the next thing? That's just how I am too. I'm like, what after that? Not that I'm dissatisfied. It's just I like doing stuff. I like having goals. So it was like, okay, I had reached a certain point in my understanding of Islam, my application of Islam, and this was the next step. And I feel so in alignment, not just from a spiritual sense, but just looking for a career path that I could literally dedicate my life effort to. And this is definitely it. Like, it satisfies so many of my interests, um, many, all of the needs in terms of, family security, and
Hmm.
so many of the things that I like in terms of science and creativity and art, and just talking to different people like this. So it's the alignment. It feels like the most correct thing, other than having our son, that has ever happened. You know?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And you said, this is how you've been able to become a better Muslim in a sense, right?
Oh yes.
It's how you've been able to hone in on your belief, and you've been able to exercise that with agriculture, right? And earlier on, about 10 minutes ago, we talked about the Final Call newspaper, and you've done a great job with actually doing the Final Call. The Final Call newspaper, once you hand it off to your brother or your sister, you're supposed to come behind that and provide a service or and fulfill the needs of your people, and you're doing
Come
that.
on.
So talk about being able to use or to understand what the Final Call is really about, taking that paper and then coming following up behind it and providing for your people. You know,
Beautiful.
I
Yes,
can
sir.
you expound upon
beautiful
that?
question.
Can you talk more about, being that service, that service to your people, being able to serve and provide for those needs?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Praise be to Allah. So yeah, in the first sense, just delivering the paper, which I'm looking forward to getting back to more consistently. The brothers in my city know. I'm looking forward to joining you, Fruit. But that's
That's
one of the
right.
first things that I
Yes, sir.
love when I came into the nation as a young man. And our city humbly is known for how we move. Like we're a study group still, but and again humbly because Allah blesses us with the spirit, and I thank Allah for my leadership here to rival whole large areas like our little Stockton study group. So it is something that
Oh
I
yeah, y'all
really
go
really
hard,
love.
Stockton.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Praise be to Allah. Um, and so, especially now, and thank you for that, because I have something in a, not that the paper is insufficient, but I have something now that I can also offer after I hand that, you know? Well, my name is Brother Mod. I do agriculture business consulting. If you or someone you know is interested in maybe starting a home garden, have you ever thought about farming? Or maybe you have a son or daughter who's interested or looking for a career or something to study in college, all those avenues are now actionable and workable. So, um, yeah, it
That's right.
is a service because with all that I do too, I strive to bring it back to our communities, whether it's people in the nation who grow or BIPOC people or all people. It's just I do have a um, focus and intentionality on raising BIPOC and Black farmers because of, like we mentioned, the historic discrimination that at this point, if you're unaware of, you've probably been working hard to be unaware. So
Right, right. With everything going on right now in the world, it should be damn near impossible for you not to know how your people are being treated in these various areas. It's impossible.
yeah, in
And I,
particular, like
yeah.
it's literally historic, and I'm not. It's not hyperbole. Like I'm a paralegal. There's a historic case that's already finished, and a couple that are going on now. Literally historic. So there's no room to argue that point, and at least not with me.
Go ahead, my brother. Yes, sir. Okay. Praise be to Allah. So we almost an hour in. Jabril, did you have any thing real quick before we go into the last part?
Man, I don't know what it was about this session, but it just brought so much out of me. Like just being able to come up with those questions and you answering the way you did. I think this is like a beautiful build. Um, Going into the nuance that is livestock for fiber production. So as we kind of start to segue into the end, uh, paint the picture for us, because I think we can talk about all these cool things in science, but a lot of times I think people need to understand and see what this means for them on the day-to-day level. So if you could, in the ideal situation, paint the picture of like what is the impact on fiber production, let's say in a uh, off-grid or small community, right? So I wake up in the morning, where am I seeing the impact from fiber production that is upscale and is serving my community, at least on that level, very well.
Oh, that's cool. Well, it could look like a handful of jobs, or it could look like several handfuls of jobs. So, in terms of community benefit, I think 10 was where the last time we talked about this piece, rather planned about this piece. That's on a small scale. 10 people other than my wife and I, we would be able to employ. And the other pieces to that depend on kind of what we mentioned earlier, or what products do we want to create versus which ones we want to feature, and then whittling that down. We're still thinking through that. But um, I'm sorry, I got lost in my train of thought.
Take your time. Take your time. Talking about employing 10 people. I'm
Yes.
after. Yep.
And so what that would look like for the folks who are doing maybe I'll call it phase one. It's totally not legit, but I'm just using something understandable, where we're doing the shearing, the cutting of the fiber, and then the proper separating and cleaning. That I'll call that phase one unofficially. Phase two would be any washing or dyeing or other treating. And then phase three would be getting it put into one of the other forms, whether it's yarn or batting or the batch that's going to go for textile.
Okay.
Those are different jobs associated with the fiber industry that
Right. Right.
best practices indicate should be handled by, one or two people, so that each person, typical to the popular model in free market businesses, there are different departments or lanes or offices or, just job hats that you wear. So that's employing several people. And, person A who does the shearing has a different day, you know, than the person who does the dyeing or the processing or the other parts along the production or distribution. So, one fiber farm, even on a small scale, could employ, and that was just a conservative estimate because we were trying to keep it low and like imagining really highly productive people who could maybe actually do two or three tasks. um, but even bigger than that, most likely, it could probably go up to 15 or 20. And then if you scale up, like, a herd of 100 versus a herd of 500, you can make more jobs. And so it has the potential in itself to be a community help and giving people value, giving people something to do, giving people ability. And these are not like low paying jobs. A lot of times, especially if they're handled right, if each of those people are handling themselves and their skills like a business, then they should have several contracts as well to be, making sure that they're, again, if you're doing it for a business, it should make sense in dollars. And so it helps too in creating those opportunities where if you're not an employee per se, well, now you just created an opportunity for a new entrepreneur to launch their business. So
Right. Right.
I hope that addresses what I kind of heard in the question.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It definitely did. Matter of fact, Mr. Brooks' question was that. Did I answer it?
Yes, sir. Absolutely. I love how you broke it down from a job perspective and even a bit from a consumer side. So, 'cause, and it kind of lends my into or goes into this audience question, which I believe is from my wife. I promised that I would get to this, but we didn't get to it in part one, and she was one of the main people talking wanting a part two. So we're going to go into this, and we'll kind of end here. So, if someone wanted to start a small farmers market, do you know if you would need any specific licensing or programming? No, like in terms of getting this off the ground, being legit, being able to do this weekly or whatever it is, like that initial startup time to make sure that your foundation and framework is in place.
Yes, you need a few things. And it always depends, even down to the city. But in general, you are going to need a few things. Most likely a business license, since farmers markets handle produce, there may be additional certifications or requirements in terms of demonstrating your ability to provide safe produce. And again, that varies even down to the city and state. A lot of times it's very particular. Um, and then, so I'm assuming that this would be the person operating the market. And then that person would also be responsible for um, ensuring that their vendors meet certain requirements. Um, so yes, you would definitely want to develop a relationship with, um, I forget the name of it, but the folks in your city who do zoning and agriculture related um, work. There typically is a food policy organization or a food policy government group or regulatory group. In California, for example, we have the California Department of Food and Agriculture. And again, it just takes a little local looking around. you locate these people and they'll let you know particularly, what you're going to need. And then with that, really great question, because this is something that I support, farmers market creation, and there's new funding for this as well. If you're establishing farmers markets in underserved communities, or that are going to be operated by BIPOC folks, so there's opportunity to support that. And if you go the farmers market route in particular, there's different kind of levels. You can do a certified farmers market, and there's different certifications that you can get, you as the market operator, or you and your vendors. And again, we're talking about farmers markets, so the fresh produce most particularly. Let's say you have a certified organic farmers market, then that means all of your produce vendors are certified organic, and you have that market carrot kind of to hold out to your community. Or just simply certified, meaning that you follow a certain set of county related administrative practices. So there's a bunch of different certifications. Again, if you want to speak with me, I can make myself available, but it's just important to think through, like with everything, what's your goals? What is going to be your value proposition? What are you setting up shop for, regardless whether it's a farmer's market or farm or whatever, because that's going to help any good planner to help you plan your plan. There's not a lot of templates that are general that are helpful, at least outside of very, very introductory types of, how do I maybe start thinking about something? At least that's my observation. So good planners and helpers will ask those particular questions, because it matters. It matters in so much of the scale piece, the reality piece, the day to day. So yeah, there's some things that you want to look into. If you need help, you can connect with me. I'll be happy to start, sharing those resources and just ideas of how to get that started. I'm excited. A brother in San Bernardino, Brother William, Farmer Warmly, my bro, he accepted the opportunity. Southern California, far from me, it's like 6-hour drive. But because it's such a great opportunity, I'm talking with him about the same things. So he's literally starting a farmer's market. He's a Black farmer.
Okay.
He's going to be the operator. And so if this is something you're interested in, sister, I'm going to be helping him to put his process and his operation together, inshallah. And maybe
Nice.
if something is helpful, I could pass those resources or information on to you, or maybe if you're asking on behalf of someone else, because it's again a great opportunity to create jobs. So
Yeah. We might be able to do a online class or seminar on that. Show people how to
hey,
do it.
let's do it, because
Tariq, come on. Or
It's
travels. We was just
always on
talking
the
about this.
same.
We
Facts,
were
facts.
just talking about this.
That's where it
I'm
came from.
so thank you, bro, for how you answered this question. Like I said,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure this is my wife. So this is a household question. We will be on Zoom and talking to you. And I would love if we could tap in. And obviously Philadelphia or like, even Atlanta is going to be different than California in terms of like some of what is needed. But I would imagine some of the skeleton, if you will, is going to be the same. So
right.
I'd love to we have some insight into that process and see what it has start to finish. And also, Farmer Warmly, we could even bring him on to even talk about his process and let me get some ones in the chat if you all are interested in the establishment of something like the STEM Files classroom. Basically, we do interviews right currently, but we would start doing specific classes that would teach you a specific skill, how to create a certain product, or render a certain service that is in the STEM fields. So we would link up with former guests, other people, and increase our network. And it would be a fee associated with these very specific classes that you will walk away from with a very useful tool or skill set. All right.
We got
some
got
a
support
couple
in the comment
ones.
section.
I see some more ones in the chat. Okay. So you done started something, brother Ahmad. You done started something.
Facts.
This is all positive Ramadan momentum.
Yes. Yes.
Exactly.
Yes, sir.
Praise be to Allah.
And it's
All right,
already
fam.
a yes.
Hey, already a yes. That's what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Got some more ones
Praise
in the
be to
comment.
Allah.
All right. Well, family, this has been another edition of the STEM Files, where we highlight the best and the brightest of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics in the Black and Brown community. Brother Ahmad, is there anything that you want to ask, or not ask, but tell the listening audience? Any last minute inspiration, encouragement?
Hopefully it's encouraging, but I realized, because I made a note, I didn't touch on crop protection from weather, which I just want to briefly mention. You want to just have some things in mind. Like for us in California, we're facing a lot of flood waters. It might be wind where you are. It might be really cold temperatures or really hot temperatures. But I would say the most important thing to keep in mind is just that, like, what's my situation, what's my threat, and then also what you're growing, because some stuff can take maybe being a little waterlogged, and you might be able to leave that out if it's a rain event, or certain things like succulents that can take more heat and don't have to be watered, especially if you have short time and you have to just move something else. Like, these are real considerations. Well, I know I can leave these out here. Try and just be thinking and knowing and that's kind of goes back to goal setting, like knowing what you're producing and what your product needs to be produced really is the key. Like I keep seeing it as a core thing, and I'm even thinking now I might make that a workshop.
Okay.
It's very important to know what you are producing, to know what you need to produce it, and to have it on a process, because it comes up again and again. So for weatherization and things like that, just wanted to touch on that. Hopefully that's inspiring. If not, then also follow what you are inspired by, because I got a whole job because of it that I probably wouldn't even, not probably, I wouldn't have qualified for this 4 years ago if I didn't do the work. So hopefully that's inspiring.
Yeah, very inspiring, very inspiring. And we definitely appreciate you and everything that you've learned and will learn in the future, because it's only going to add to a better, not only agribusiness specialist for yourself, but a better community for the people you serve. And also, too, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan teaches us to watch the weather, and right now, right now, the weather is at an all-time phenomena right now because of because of the change of the guard in the world right now.
Come on.
And because of that change of the guard, we're going to see things in the weather patterns that we would really want the knowledge of how to protect our crops from the weather. So we appreciate that knowledge, and we apologize for almost making you miss that.
Oh, it's good. It's always rich conversation.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. We always want to have the STEM Files, really, every episode, conversations on a very high vibration. And we always want to make sure that we are bringing the best type of conversation to your living room, your phone, your car, your job, wherever you at. We always want to serve that for you. So for family, for those who are watching, this has been another edition of the STEM Files, where we talked with our brother Ahmad Majid. Here he is in the garden, doing some great work for his community. But family, if there's anything that you'd like to know from our brother, his contact information is in the description on YouTube and in the caption on Facebook. You can also email him as well. That information is also there too. But family, this has been another edition of the STEM Files. Tariq Cardiac, the brain engineer, Ahmad Majid. Family, thank y'all so much for tuning in.
Always.
Peace, family.
Peace.
You believe in these these false prophets, I say I bet he lying. No football, New York City Giants. Girl dad, rest in peace to Kobe Bryant. When we teaching our babies, we teach them heavy science. Heavy science. Heavy science. When we teaching our women, we teach them heavy science. Heavy science. Heavy science. When we teach men, we teach them heavy